Hello, welcome back to the Football Talent Show. My name's Adam. I'm joined today again by Jacek and also joined again by Johan, as this is part 2 of our Feyenoord series. Last week we released our club deep dive going into the fan base, the famed rivalry with Ajax, the Arne Slot era, and some of the other historic achievements. And this week we're going more in depth into the talent itself. So for the scouts out there, this is probably the episode you've been waiting for. We're talking about some of the big talents in the first team who have been making waves in the Eredivisie, but also some of the academy talents who have yet to really make their mark on the first team, but are primed for a big future. So Jacek, how excited are you for this episode?
I'm really excited. I'm not going to hide that Varkenoord is one of my favorite academies in Central Europe, let's say. An interesting fact, Varken means pig in Dutch. And a few years ago, I made a research. So why is the name Varkenoord there? And apparently, ages ago, centuries ago, there were fields with pigs there. And I really like the conclusion of the article that said, ages ago, there were pigs there. And nowadays, we have some wonderful footballers. And I'm really excited to talk about some of the most exciting ones.
Yeah, I think the quality on those pitches has come a long way since the pigs were roaming. But we'll start with some of the first team players. We have some academy graduates, of course, in our first team section as well. But we're starting with a foreign talent who made his way over to Feyenoord, and I would say potentially the most high profile talent in this Feyenoord first team right now. So Santi Gimenez. Let's speak about him first.
Jimenez, when he came, first he was reserve after Danilo, which we got from Ajax. But everybody saw when he got it into the pitch, he always scored, and he was a very good substitute, a very good pinch hitter. And then after, I think a couple of months, he became first team player. And in the year 2023, he was berserk. He scored so many goals. The last part of the season 2022-2023, and the first part of 23-24. There was at one time there was a list of top scorers in the world through a whole calendar year, and he was up there with some players like Messi and Ronaldo. So he had a very good 2023. Unfortunately, last season, the last couple of months, he wasn't that good anymore. The first couple of this season, he's been also struck with an injury. He looks very fatigued because he's been flying over and back to Mexico because he has to play with the international team. They had the Gold Cup, the World Cup. Well, so he had a lot of matches that he played in the last couple of years. So I think the injury that he had a couple of weeks ago and he's now recovered from, it maybe is good for him. So he has some rest and he doesn't have to travel all the time. But he's very talented. He's a big guy. He's smart, also very charismatic. One of the most popular athletes in Mexico at this moment. He's actually married right now with an actress in Mexico. So got a huge following here in Holland from the Mexican side. I think he's very talented, but I'm not sure if he's ready for the move to the biggest clubs yet. I'm not sure if he's a fit at clubs like Real Madrid, Barcelona, or Liverpool. Nottingham Forest was really trying to acquire him last summer. He said, "I want a bigger team, a bigger club, bigger competition." We as Feyenoord supporters also thought, "Well, that's not a good match. He should go to a higher level." For example, a club like Dortmund maybe is a good next step. But like he's a Mexican, he's a Latin player. He's very attracted to going to Spain or something. So I'm not sure if a club like Atletico Madrid makes an offer for him. I'm pretty sure he's interested and is willing to listen to what they have to offer. But I think normally this would be his last season at Feyenoord because he's young and he's very talented.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Santiago Jimenez, and I mean, we all know about his qualities. I think he's more than just a finisher. He also has really, really good movement between the lines. He's very agile also. He's good at shifting the ball in tight spaces, so he does bring a very complete package. But I do have to say that I think, especially in social media and on Twitter, there is a little bit of too much overrating of Santiago Jimenez. I think that people are too quick to talk about him as a truly elite player. I think that he's too unproven yet for that. I think he's too untested at the highest level. Just look at the amount of matches that he's also played in kind of elite European competition, and it's still quite a limited set for him. So I think he still does have another step that he needs to do between going to one of your truly top teams because look at him going to a club like Man United, and look at a guy like Depay when he went there, or even Xerxes after having a really good season in this area. I mean, these are huge steps in difficult environments, and you often need kind of that step in between. So I think a move to a club like you say in Nottingham Forest would be excellent for him. But the question is, Feyenoord will get an offer probably from a top club willing to spend the big money. And then if you're Feyenoord, why would you sell to Nottingham Forest then? So I'm really, really scared that Santi Gimenez's next step will be that huge step, and it will not help anybody in the long term.
I fully agree with that. He's not ready for a top club, and I hope that he will choose wisely. Of course, Johan, you said that he dreams of a big club, but yeah, these are always ambitions of these players. But the next step should be, as you mentioned, Nottingham Forest or West Ham, if he wants to go to England, or if he really wants to go to Spain, a team like Villarreal maybe. But if he goes to an absolutely top club, he can get burned. He can get burned, and it's really difficult to be back from that. So Santi Jimenez, of course, one of the most interesting number nines, pure number nines in Europe. You said that he's Mexican. He was actually born in Argentina and living in Argentina for the most part of his life. He moved to Mexico when he was very young, and yeah, he's fully Mexican now, and Mexican fans are really proud of him. Every time I post about him, there are some comments from Mexican people saying, "Wow, we are so proud. Santi is great." But as we said, he should take the next step wisely. And for Feyenoord, actually, he should be the most expensive sale in your history. If it's not, then something will go really wrong. So for now, your most expensive sale was Mats Wiefer, and Santi Jimenez has much more hype, and you can get a really good deal with Santi. And I wish you that, but I also wish that for Santi that he makes the right choice.
I think the relationship in Mexico is also a little bit of an odd one. I mean, we all know how fanatic Mexican fans are, but just doing the research prior, I didn't realize actually how poor Santi Jimenez's record is for the national team. He has 4 goals in 32 appearances for El Tri, which, I mean, we're talking about a center forward who is being linked with 40, 50 million euro moves, and he's struggling to score against the likes of Trinidad, Tobago, and Jamaica in CONCACAF fixtures. So I don't think I want to take too much from these matches. I mean, we've all seen what he can do in Europe, but just a very, very odd record at international level. And what's also, from a broader sense, kind of interesting about Santi Jimenez is the fact that Feyenoord signed him from Cruz Azul for 6 million euros, which also tells a lot about Feyenoord's scouting processes, because there's not a lot of clubs from Europe that would necessarily be spending so much on a player from a Mexican league and also then profit so much from it. So talk to me maybe a little bit about the net that Feyenoord casts. Do they like to look all over the globe when it comes to acquiring talent?
This signing is purely credited to our boss, Dennis de Kloese, which came in like 2 or 3 seasons ago. Before that, he has been living and working in Mexico for a lot. He's been married to a Mexican wife. He was a sporting director of the Mexican national team, but also been the technical director of clubs in LA, for example. So he has a long history in Mexico. So he knows the family Jimenez because his father, like you said, Jacek, his father was an Argentinian footballer that ended his career in Mexico. And that was why Jimenez was raised in Mexico and adapted to the Mexican lifestyle and loved the country so much that he chose to play for Mexico, even though he's a huge Messi fan and his dream was to play with Messi one day. But like I said, Dennis de Kloese, which is the boss at Feyenoord right now, has a lot of connections in Mexico. We've been linked to more Mexican players, but for now we haven't signed any other players. But you saw when de Kloese took over as boss at Feyenoord, there was a lot of players from South America and also from the MLS. Our left back Marcos Lopez, who's now playing at Copenhagen, was also acquired through his connections. So that's basically how we ended up with Santiago Jimenez.
I think it's quite risky to sign players from Mexico. You don't see many players from Mexico thriving in Europe. I think that the Mexican league became kind of a mess, even though I'm a fan of Mexican football, but I'm not the fan how the things are going there right now. So it's kind of a risky thing to sign players from Mexico. I'm really glad that it worked out perfectly with Santi Gimenez. But if you say, yeah, we want more players from Mexico, just be careful.
Yeah, it's definitely one to watch out for. I think I always have the perception of the Mexican league as a bit of a mercenary league where elder statesmen from Latin America and South America tend to go for a big final paycheck, but it shows that there's talent also there. I mean, also look at a guy like Erwin Lozano at Eindhoven. Maybe not now at Eindhoven, but more so when he came through. What a career he's had in Europe. So the talent will always be there in Mexico because there's just such a fascination for football that is truly unrivaled.
There is another example in the Netherlands of Edson Alvarez, and I always say that Holland Eredivisie is such a great first step, first European step for all these North American and also South American players. It's probably the perfect first move to Europe for them.
Yeah, totally. I mean, as someone from America, I can also say that the Dutch are often the most accommodating for someone with an English language. I mean, yes, me and you have traveled to Eindhoven often, and even the bus drivers there speak fluent English and can basically give you directions around the entire city with ease. And you compare that to Germany, where there's people that work at the airport sometimes that don't even know another language than German, or even in Belgium, for example, or in Spain and Italy, it's even far worse. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to be said about kind of the Dutch culture, which is so good for foreign players. But let's move on to another player here who is Dutch, Quinten Timber. Many will obviously, of course, know the name more so because of his brother's current success at Ajax. But I think Quinten Timber is a name that everybody will have on their radar very, very soon if they don't already have him. He's 23 years old. Interestingly, he was actually raised in the Feyenoord Academy, but left for Ajax in 2014. And then almost a decade later, he returned. He was signed from FC Utrecht for 7.4 million in 2022. And I think his rise under Arne Slot and in general has just been stellar. He's become a full Dutch international, making his international debut in March of this year. And in general, has become a true leader in this side, even captaining them throughout this entire campaign. So, Johan, talk to me a little bit about Quinten Timber's talents. And then also what's interesting, of course, is the fact that how was he received after returning to Feyenoord when he left the club to go to Amsterdam earlier in his career? Was that something that kind of hung above his signing, or were fans easy to forgive him given that he left so young when he was just a teenager?
Good thing is he never played for the first team of Ajax. And back then he had a different surname. Back then, when they left Feyenoord Academy, they were called Maduro, the name of their father, but they were raised by their mother. So they chose, when they were a little bit older, they chose the name of Timber, which is the surname of their mother. So when they left, they had a different surname. So back then it was a huge thing that the two twin brothers left to Ajax. It was a little bit in the same period like we talked about in the last show. Lots of young talents leaving at younger age to go to other clubs, not only to England but also to Ajax or PSV. So it was a huge loss. It didn't really work out for him at Ajax because they wanted to use him as a right back defender, but he's like, no, I want to play midfield. And then Utrecht said, okay, you can play on the midfield right over here. And he had only one season at Utrecht, and he played very, very well. So then Ajax, PSV, and Feyenoord all wanted him to sign him. Feyenoord, and that's very new for us. Normally we lose those kind of bidding wars, but Feyenoord won the war also because Ajax said, okay, you can come to us, but then you have to play right back defender. And he's like, no, I still don't want to play that. I want to play on the midfield. PSV wanted him as well, but we were faster. So he came to Feyenoord. The first season wasn't that good. He played quite a lot, basically as a defending midfielder, but that's not his strength. He played next to Orkun Kukcu, a Feyenoord graduate, a youth academy graduate. But then when Kukcu left to Benfica, he basically got to play on the position that Kukcu was playing. And he's been amazing ever since. Last year he was basically the best player in the team. This season he's been struggling with injuries as well, but he made his national team debut, and he's really good. He's so talented. He's got this, we call it the timber turn, in which you get the ball when somebody plays. He has a defender in his back, and he always seems to turn around. He never loses the ball when the ball gets placed into his feet. He's been scoring quite a lot of goals as well, giving good passes. So it's like Jimenez. I'm not sure what his top level is going to be, where he's going to be ending up. With Timber, I'm pretty sure he's gonna be right there next to his brother, who's playing at Arsenal, of course. He's very talented. He's got a different path than his twin brother, but I'm sure he's gonna make a move next season as well to a bigger club and play for the next couple of 10 years at a higher level.
Yeah, I totally agree with that last point. For me, also, I see Timber's future more certain than Santiago Gimenez because I think Quinten Timber is also the epitome of just these so in-demand players, these super press-resistant athlete midfielders. It's so difficult to get him off the ball. He's, like we say, a bots-to-bots worker with such good stature, such good physical qualities, but then he's clearly also raised in the Dutch football philosophy, so he's technically extremely strong, so well-rounded. He's like a guy like Tiani Reinders also a little bit, or a guy like Felix Lemaitre in Germany. These players are just so in demand. They bring you so much. They're so modern, and I think that's why he'll have such a big future. I also think it's funny that you mentioned that he doesn't want to play right back. I mean, so many central midfielders now refuse to play right back. Joshua Kimmich also for the longest time. It feels like every player hates playing fullback nowadays, but I guess that's just how football is when there's other options available.
As we mentioned in our player roles episode, versatility can be a problem. And for Quinten Timber, it was a problem when he was at Ajax and they were throwing him almost everywhere in midfield, the right back. And then he went to Utrecht. And let's take a small moment to praise Utrecht philosophy in the past years. So they had Quinten Timber, they had Duvikas, who went to Celta, they had Ryan Flamingo, who went to PSV. So a really good place for young footballers. But it's true that he made the next step at Feyenoord and surely one of the most interesting Eredivisie players right now, and surely a player that is monitored by top 5 league clubs.
Okay, moving on to the third player from the first team. He's someone we also briefly mentioned in our show last week as almost a discovery of this season. Anis Hadj Moussa. He's a 22-year-old winger. He's born in Paris but represents Algeria at the senior level. And he was signed for 3.5 million from Patro Eisen in the Belgian second tier in the summer. But that actually came after a loan spell with Vitesse. And what's pretty much immediately comes to mind when you look at him is the fact that it's very, very difficult to understand why exactly Feyenoord wanted to spend 3.5 million when you just look at his transfer mark statistics, because he was in and out of a Vitesse side that got relegated. He wasn't necessarily actually that productive in terms of goals and assists, but clearly Feyenoord saw something in him because although he hasn't always been a starting player this season, he has been pretty big in some key moments, especially in the Champions League. He had a goal against Man City and that spectacular comeback. So what do you make of Anis Hadji Moussa and his start so far to life in Feyenoord?
Like you said, he came from Vitesse, and the expectations were really, really low. He's a right winger. At the beginning of the season, Priske tried to implement the 3-4-3 system with the wingers playing more or less like tens. So everybody's like, okay, you're playing a system where there's no place for Hadj Moussa. So in the friendly matches in the beginning of the season, he also played as a right wing defender, which was definitely not his strength. But problem when he came, everybody said he's not that good at defending. He's very lazy. He doesn't defend well. Everybody saw his talent when he had the ball. I think he's the most gifted dribbler that I've ever seen in a Feyenoord jersey. He can pass players in like a square meter. It's hardly it's impossible what he does. So when he came, everyone was like, okay, yeah, well, maybe for the future, maybe he will, and maybe we can sell him for a bigger price to a club in France or Belgium or whatever. So nobody expected a lot of him. But the last couple of weeks, when Ibrahim Osman, a loanee from Brighton, got injured, basically he got a starting chance. And the last six matches, he scored 5 goals. So he's been doing really, really, really good, especially when you consider that he has been playing at the amateur level for 3 or 4 years ago. There was no chance that he was playing at this level. So Willem van Hanegem, which is probably the biggest Feyenoord player we ever had, also a player who was playing in the 70s. He has a column in the newspaper every week, and he compares him with Ryan Mahrez, who also played at Le Havre, I think, when he was 22, and then got picked up in England, and then, of course, had his amazing career.
Yeah, I think Riyad Mahrez is also a little bit of an easy comparison, talking about an Algerian winger born in France. But There are of course parallels. I do think a lot of these North African wingers seem to parallel to each other. I think there's no region in the world who are better at creating these tight space manipulators, trickery wingers who are just so good with tempo manipulations.
Yeah, and one more point in common with Riyad Mahrez is that, yeah, Riyad Mahrez at the age of, let's say, 21, 22, he was considered as a street footballer, a trickster. Okay, he's a good dribbler. He's great in tight spaces, but he's just not good enough for top level football. And he made all these people wrong. And I hope that Hadj Moussa will also go that way. He's an incredible player to watch. As you said, he could tie a tie with his legs, magnificent in limited spaces, fantastic dribbler. I think for these kinds of players, the key to make a step forward is to improve consistency and decision making. And you can see these past weeks, he's really working on that. He's really consistent. His decision making is much better. He provides numbers, so it's really promising, and I hope that he will keep it up. And about this scouting network of Feyenoord, I think we should mention, even if you look at the squads, at the current squads, we have Santi Gimenez, he's from Mexico. We have Julian Carranza, who came from the MLS. We have Jaden Mitchell, who came from Costa Rica. We have Kwamen Andreev, who came from Bulgaria. We have Franco from Czech Republic. We have Sauer, who's on loan at Breda, big talent, who came from Slovakia, from Žilina. So I think they do a really good job there, and they do not concentrate only on one or two countries or regions, but really they scouting has no limits. I really respect that.
Yeah, I would say wider Dutch football in general is always just such a good league to watch for kind of these global talents, but Feyenoord especially as well. But let's also not discount, of course, what Feyenoord has been producing from the academy. And when we're talking about first team graduates from the academy, it's impossible not to mention Antoni Milambo. He's a 19-year-old attacking midfielder, the youngest debutant in Feyenoord's Eredivisie history, making his debut as a 16-year-old. He had a bit of a stop start tenure under Arne Slot. We mentioned it a bit in the previous episode when we talked about kind of Arne Slot's era, but I think he's been one of the biggest benefactors from the appointment of Brian Pristy, really coming into his own and becoming a key player. Absolutely top performances in Feyenoord's two Champions League victories, and in general, just really beginning to show also the promise that he had at such young ages. So, Antoni Milambo, Jacek, you have a jersey of him at home well before he was even one of the top talents on global football's radar. But Johan, I'll go to you first. What are your thoughts about him, and is this kind of his breakthrough season?
Yes, and like Jacek said in the show last week, we were a little bit worried because he was there at such a young age. He made his debut, and we were like, okay, this is going to be the new next talent. And then it basically we saw him disappear. He played his games with under 21. He wasn't really performing well over there. He wasn't really excelling, so he wasn't really knocking on the door at the first team. So everybody expected him to maybe move this summer, maybe on a loan move or maybe for good. But then Priske was quite clear and said, no, I see some talents in this guy. I want to work with him, and it's been panning out well. He's been playing very good. He has a role now. That was his problem with Arne Slot as well. Sometimes he was used as an 8, sometimes he was used as a 10, and now Priske is quite clear. He's just using him as a number 10 attacking midfielder. And he's been doing well. He's been scoring those 2 goals at Benfica, like you said. Score also the goal against Girona. So he's our top scorer in the Champions League right now, and he's got a contract for a couple of years left. So we hope to see him for a couple of years at Feyenoord, and maybe walk the same route as Kukcu or Geertruida, proven players that played more than 150 games for Feyenoord and won prizes at the club.
When I first watched Milambo, he gave me he reminded me of Paul Pogba, and I think it's still a quite valid comparison. Of course, Pogba is not having the greatest time now, but I still used to love Paul Pogba as this elegant box-to-box midfielder who can provide really good numbers, and I see that in Milambo. I watched him for the first time probably at the Euros under 17 when they made the final and they lost the final against France. But let's just remind some of the players of this French squad: Desiré Doué, Matistel, Atangana. So incredible, one of the best under 17 sides that I have ever seen in my life. And Holland had this midfield with Milambo, Silvano Vos, and Gabriel Misahouy. And I think out of these three players, people were rating more the two others, so Vos and Misahouy. And right now, Milambo is having the best time out of the three. So I'm really happy. I was always a fan. As I mentioned, I own, as you mentioned, Adam, I own his shirt. So definitely my favorite Feyenoord player right now.
Yeah, I was a little bit hesitant when you said the Paul Pogba comparison because Milambo is obviously quite a bit shorter than Pogba still. Milambo's 1 meter 79. I think Pogba's 1 meter 88. So he's definitely got size on him. But I don't think we should discount how physically robust Milambo is. I mean, you can see also why he thrives in central channels and why Feyenoord are not just saying, okay, fast, technical player, let's put him on the wings. Because Milambo could also play on the wings and probably would be a pretty decent winger as well. But he has this physical robustness that really allows him to get through central channels well. He's able to hold players off. He's able to carry through kind of against bigger opponents. So that's kind of his X factor, I would say. And in general, I really, really love these athletic, technical dribblers who normally you would say you put them on the wings, but nowadays are moving more towards the center. I think two of the biggest examples are guys like Musiala and guys like Xavi Simons as well. And I think that Molambo is in the same vein. He's also this really, really pure technical player who also has the physicality and the robustness to be effective in central channels. And the final thing I'll say on him as well, he's actually a very, very good finisher. He's super, super technical finisher. His inside the foot finish is kind of what I really love. You can see that he's very, very detail oriented in how he decides what to use in moments. He has a really, really calm and composed strike. So he's not really rushed in these moments. And I think that he'll have a big, big future beyond Feyenoord.
Exactly. As I said, I watched him when he was 16, so physically he was really, really strong and bigger than most of the opponents. That's why I compared him to Pogba. But you can see this elegance in moves. So like Pogba moves and Milambo just has it. Also this versatility. He can play almost anywhere in midfield, and as you said, even on the false wing sometimes. So a top prospect, and I'm so happy. I'm still waiting for the explosion on one of his teammates from this Dutch under 17 team. So Isaac Babadi was the main star of this under 17 team. But yeah, it's Milambo's year. It's definitely not Babadi's year yet, but it's Milambo's year, and I'm really happy.
Okay, moving on then to another midfielder. He's a more defensive midfielder, I would say. Also highly, highly talented, though. He's not really at the true breakthrough yet. He's still a bit more of a squad player at the moment with pretty limited minutes. He's made just one very, very short cameo in the Champions League and also in the Eredivisie this season. He's only amounted to 200 minutes. But nevertheless, Zechiël, still a big, big talent. 20-year-old defensive midfielder. He spent a lot of time in the Feyenoord Academy, but he was actually his first youth club was Sparta Rotterdam. So another interesting club in Rotterdam. Johan, what do you think about Zechiël? And maybe even before going into your thoughts about Zechiël, the rivalry in Rotterdam. I mean, we obviously mentioned in depth the rivalry of Ajax in our opening episode, but there's also clubs in Rotterdam. We have Excelsior and Sparta Rotterdam as the main two. So at senior level, it seems that Feyenoord is obviously the biggest club by far, but maybe just even at youth level, what is it like for these kind of mini youth derbies against Sparta or Excelsior?
Sparta fans are not gonna like what I'm gonna say, but they think there's a real rivalry between the two of us. But we really don't care about Sparta. Sparta is so small, such a small club, and they have a cooperation with Ajax, which is going to end after this season, I guess. But that's why we always say Ajax is basically the second club from Amsterdam. It's what we always say. It's rather than people that are too lazy to go to Amsterdam to watch Ajax. So we don't care about Sparta, even though they have a very good youth academy. They have some amazing players that came from Sparta. Sometimes they also make the step to Feyenoord, Wijnaldum in the past was one example that came from Sparta to Feyenoord. Another one is Zechiël, who came at a young age. At Sparta, they said you should go to Ajax, you shouldn't go to Feyenoord, you should go to Ajax. That's why we hate Sparta. But because he loved Feyenoord, he loved Rotterdam, so he chose to go to Feyenoord. It wasn't that big of a star when he was younger. He never played in the youth teams of Holland under 16 or older. He only made his debut for a Dutch national team, which was the Holland under 21 team only last March, I think. So he's kind of a late to the party. But Arne Slot saw him play at the youth and he gave him a chance. He didn't play that often. He also struggled with an injury last year. This season, he also struggled with an injury. But he's one player that hasn't shown a lot of minutes at the first team of Feyenoord. But every time he plays, he brings something that every Feyenoord fan loves, and everybody is saying, why isn't he getting more minutes? He's an energy guy. He's very talented, very gifted, very good with his feet. I really love him, and I want to see him play more minutes.
I think the main thing about Zechiël is his work rate, his mobility on the pitch, and that he always gives 100%. He's not one of these magicians that will change the game with one touch, but he will just keep running it and keep fighting. And I'm not surprised that Feyenoord fans love him so much. I mean, when you see a guy like that running, making kilometers, and giving it all on the pitch, you just love him, and very often these players become fans' favorites. And what are your thoughts on Excelsior? I think you have a better relationship with Excelsior. I think even in an official way, because I see many Feyenoord youngsters going to Excelsior on loan. So, okay, I understand that with Sparta, strained relationships, but I think it's kind of a level of Real Madrid and Getafe, where Getafe think that, yeah, we are the big rivals, and Real Madrid fans do not even know where Getafe Stadium is. So, and what about Excelsior?
Yeah, Excelsior. We used to cooperate with them way back then. I think in the first years of 2000, we had a cooperation with them in which we got a lot of our younger players, our talents, which were not good enough for the Feyenoord first team. We loaned them out. Some big names went there, like for example Salomon Kalou. When he came from Ivory Coast, we loaned him out to Excelsior for one season, and then we got him back, of course. And there's more players like that. Thomas Buffel is another player who played like that. Mokotjo, South African player. You shared a youth academy even back then, because they didn't have the money, so we helped them. Robin van Persie was basically Excelsior player back then, but because we had the cooperation, got to Feyenoord. So Excelsior is a very, very, very small team. They have a stadium which can only have like 2,000 people, I think. They're sometimes they're in the first league, sometimes they relegate. Every Feyenoord fan kind of likes Excelsior because they don't have a big mouth like Sparta does. They're well mannered, behaved club, and like I said, there was a cooperation a couple of years ago. There's no formal cooperation anymore. We have that with FC Dordrecht now, which plays in the second league. Lots of youngsters going there and going back as well. But for now, we don't have a formal working relationship with them anymore. But of course, it's the two stadiums are like 5 kilometers abroad. So it makes sense for younger players who are not good enough for Feyenoord. For example, Lennart Hadjes and Mimairo Benita last year, they went on a loan over there. And Nesto Groen made the move from the Feyenoord on the 21 team to play over there. So Excelsior is a fun team. We kind of like them.
Very, very cool to see the different moods amongst the clubs in Rotterdam. But I mean, we just mentioned loan moves here in general. Do you think Zechiël would profit from a loan move? Do you think that's something that he needs in his career? Or do you think it is more so a matter of time before the minutes start coming in? Because I mean, he's shown also in moments that he is maybe ready for Feyenoord. I look back at the Dutch Super Cup at the beginning of the season where he played 60 minutes, had an assist, was spectacular, really, really good performance. And you would almost think, okay, this is going to be his season that kicked on. And then, I mean, we're talking about a player who's really got no minutes whatsoever, not even really substitute cameos. So do you think he needs a loan, or do you think he just needs a little bit more patience?
It's confusing. Like I said before, it's confusing for us supporters because we don't understand why he's not getting that many minutes. Feyenoord got Kevin Nadje, a player from the third French division, Ivory Coast player. Nobody expected anything, but he's getting basically the minutes. Everybody now thinks Zechiël should get those minutes because Nadje hasn't shown anything that we really like. But yeah, for now, especially when Feyenoord is getting a new defensive midfielder, which everybody's expecting, Zechiël should definitely look out for a loan. A club in the Eredivisie, I think he should definitely be good enough for a club like NAC or PEC Zwolle. He should definitely be good enough to be playing over there. But for now, I hope it is until the winter break. We have 4 games left. I hope we see him more because I don't know. I really like him. Every time I see him play, I'm like, okay, I want to see more of this. But for some reason, Arne Slot didn't play him a lot. The same with Priske, and those guys know what they're doing, I think. So if they don't give him minutes, 2 coaches now, there's probably a flaw in his game which I don't really see, but those coaches do see. And maybe, it's good for him to be loaned out, especially when we get new players coming on his same position. Because he needs minutes because he's a good guy.
I think a loan would be a perfect solution for him, but not to Dordrecht. He couldn't go to the Eerste Divisie. He's probably ready to get regular minutes in a mid-table Eredivisie team. And about Dordrecht, there is one player on loan there that I really really like, Jaden Slory. Yeah, she's doing quite fine from what I have seen, and I really hope that he'll be back. Actually, I even watched his father playing football. So, oh, and I think he also has a younger brother in the academy. So, what a family! And I would really love to see Slory in the first team.
Slory is one of those guys we talked about it in the show last week. Slory played in the under 21 competitions for 3 years, and his numbers over there were excellent. He's been scoring a lot of goals, giving a lot of assists as a right winger. So he's been doing great. But he's one of those players that's not good enough for the first team right now, but too good for the under 21 team. So that's why Feyenoord basically last summer said, okay, you really need some minutes on senior level. So they loaned him out at Dordrecht. He's doing really well over there. His younger brother used to play at the youth academy at Feyenoord, then went to NAC. But last summer he came back from NAC to Feyenoord. He's a defender, unlike his father and his older brother, who are all both right wingers. But yeah, it's a nice family, and then you really know that you're really old, Jacek, when you have seen his father play as well. Same counts for me. Right now at the youth academy at Feyenoord, Robin van Persie's son is over there. The son of Dirk Kuyt is playing in the youth academy. The son of John Dal Thomasson is playing in the youth academy, and also 2 sons of Antoni Slory are playing in the youth academy. So we'll see if one of them makes the first team.
Netherlands is a special place for that. Even now, you mentioned all these players, but there is, I don't know, Rodney Snyder, for example. There is a great example. We were at the Autumn Cup with Adam, and we met Jaden de Guzman. He seemed such a cool kid. We had a nice chat. And I didn't ask him that, obviously, but I want to ask you, why is Jaden de Guzman in Eindhoven right now and not in Varkenoord?
He used to be at Varkenoord. He used to be a Feyenoord player, but then there was the contract issue, and PSV basically offered him more money. So just like his father once did, he basically left us for no money. The same happened with his son. So family, the Guzman is not the biggest of friends at Feyenoord. No, uh, he is the last biggest of talents that we lost to PSV or Ajax, because there were years that every summer all our talents went to Ajax or PSV. He's the biggest one that has left the last couple of years. The tendency the last couple of years that we're getting players in from Ajax and PSV, which is unprecedented. We've never seen that before, so that's a good thing, and it also shows that we're making moves, that players, even though we don't have a under 21 team at the second highest level, that still players want to come in at Feyenoord. The path that they've been offered, that is probably something nice. But the Guzman, man, his father plays at Sparta right now, so well, you know kind of what kind of family it is.
Let's move on then to our final talent from the first team that we'll profile here today, Ibrahim Osman. He's only on loan at Feyenoord, and it's pretty much entirely unlikely that he'll ever turn into a permanent transfer. Brighton is the club that actually hold his rights, and Brighton signed him for nearly 20 million from North Zealand in the summer. He's born in Accra, Ghana, and he's developed in the Right to Dream Academy. So a really, really cool academy doing work in African football. And I think he's been difficult to judge so far at Feyenoord. He's had some very, very good moments, also some inconsistent moments. I think that, like I said, 20 million is quite a steep price tag that Brighton paid for him, and we haven't necessarily seen all the time that that's really money worth spending. But what have you made so far of his tenure at Feyenoord? Do you think for what is a short-term solution for 1 year that it has profited Feyenoord, or do you think that that winger role could have been used more wisely by getting someone in who would have then a long-term future?
Of course, as a Feyenoord fan, you hope to get long-term players. Last year, we loaned Yankuba Minte, which we already shortly discussed in the other podcast. And from the first moment you saw, he was special. He also had the same trajectory. He came from a Danish club, but got bought by English club by a lot of money. And then was loaned out at Feyenoord. And Minte his impact was big. It was with goals and assists and his speed. So this summer, when we knew we couldn't renew Minte, we hoped that we could get him for another year of loan. But Newcastle sold him to Brighton, and he's doing quite well over there. But then we got Osman from Brighton, but he had his best spell in Denmark at the left wing. At Feyenoord, he has only been playing on the right wing or sometimes even as striker. At this moment, I'm pretty sure Brighton doesn't think he's ready yet to get to that team and play in Premier League next year. But of course, he's also a young player, new country for him as well. So maybe he also needs some talent, some time to develop, and maybe just like we also talked about Timber or Gimenez, just needs like 3, 4, 5, 6 months to develop to the Dutch team, to Champions League football, and maybe from after the winter break he will be a great success. But for now, I'm not convinced. I'm not sure. He's fast, but other than that, I haven't seen that much of qualities that he has.
But as you mentioned, he plays on the right wing, and in my opinion, Ibrahim Osman should be playing on the left wing. It's like you praised Yankuba Minte, but he was playing on the right. I think your perception would be different if Yankuba Minte would be playing only on the left. Like it limits these players. They need to play on inverted wings. As for Osman, I also have my worries. He was really good for North Zealand, but there was a player like Kamaldeen Suleimana who was even probably better than Osman a few years ago, and then he went to the Premier League and he disappeared.
Yeah, I think I can only kind of echo the thoughts that Jacek and Johan put out there. For me, Osman is a player who clearly has a lot of quality, but is also a player who I feel like I've seen 100 times before. Right now, he is still kind of purely this explosive winger. He's very, very direct, very vertical on the ball, but you're missing necessarily the fact that he's getting into scoring positions. You're missing some great finishing output. You're missing necessarily an ability to also contest 1v1 duels at low speeds or when he's kind of stuck in corners and tight spaces. As Jacek said, I think generally these players are always a little bit unfavored when they're playing on the wrong foot, when their stronger foot is basically taking them away from goal. I mean, in those scenarios, the best that Osman can do most of the time is basically get to the byline and cross the ball or cut the ball back because he's always forced wide. I think that would change on the left. But on the other hand, I think that's also something that Feyenoord probably should have taken into account before the season when signing him, because I mean that's not necessarily something that should just come out once he's arrived that his weaker foot is actually the left foot, and you're kind of forcing him away from goal the whole time. But it will be interesting to watch. I'm not necessarily convinced yet that this will be a player for the absolute Premier League standard, but nevertheless, super, super interesting. And let's say it again. I mean, he's 20 years old. How many wingers have we seen at 20 years who are inconsistent and have poor decision making, and then within the space of 6 months make a tremendous leap forward? I mean, yes, we've been talking about Jamie Bino Gittins for the past few weeks. 6 months ago, we both had some pretty big reservations about Jamie Gittins' development. Was too much trying to be an explosive winger, not necessarily getting into goal scoring positions, very inconsistent, lacked fitness. And right now, he looks like the closest thing to Vinicius Jr. in world football in the space of 6 months. So I think things can move very, very fast for wingers. And I wouldn't be surprised if Osman completely changes my perception in the near future.
And in Brighton, like people know how to get 100% of these players. For example, Simon Adingra is highly rated in England, and in my opinion, Ibrahim Osman has more talent than Simon Adingra. So let's wait and observe. But surely playing on the right wing for Feyenoord isn't very helpful for his development.
Okay, just profiled some of the top players in the first team, but now let's move on to some of the top rising academy talents. And Jacek, our first player here, Givairo Read, but I know you have something quick that you want to mention before we get into the players themselves.
Yeah, just before we start profiling these players, I would like to mention that the Academy of Feyenoord, so the famous Varkenoord, is just next to the stadium, and it doesn't really happen very often. Normally, these academies are very far away from the main stadium, and it must be an amazing feeling for a young footballer going to training and like walking next to the big stadium and saying to himself, "Yeah, this is my goal. I train every day to play in on that stadium." In my opinion, it's an amazing thing, and it's a shame that most clubs cannot have that. It's understandable because the grounds are very expensive, and you can just build a huge academy in the middle of the city right now. But I think it's also one of the things that makes Feyenoord so special.
Yeah, I think it's even interesting when you compare it to some of the Dutch clubs. Look at PSV, for example, where the training complex is very, very desolate and away from the city. It's almost in a park, which I guess has its own glamours of being this kind of remote area away from noise and away from kind of the city hustle and bustle. But on the other hand, like you say, you don't necessarily always feel like you're one step away from the professional football club, and you can't necessarily see that destination in front of your eyes. So definitely a cool component about Feyenoord. And one of the players who from the academy is on the verge of making that step and actually has already made his professional debut, Givairo Read. He's an 18-year-old right back. He made his Europa League debut for the club last season, and 2 months ago he actually signed a long-term contract keeping him at Feyenoord until 2029. He also featured in the Dutch Super Cup triumph in August, played 13 minutes in that match. So still having to wait and bide his time for some real concrete minutes. But is he perhaps kind of the long-term heir to Gertruda's position at right back? Do you think he has the potential to emulate his career?
He definitely could be. He's been playing way more than we expected because we have Lotomba, which we all were already discussed. We basically bought him as a back of as a replacement for Geertruida. We also already had Kuip, but both of them have been struggling with injuries. So he's been playing quite a lot, and he's been doing so well that at this moment, if you ask any Feyenoord fan who would you prefer to see at the right back, I think you will get three different answers. Some people will say Lotomba, other supporters will say Kuip, and some others will say Givairo Read, which I think is a great compliment to the young Givairo Read, who's now been playing for the second year at Feyenoord. We got him from Volendam. He already made his debut for the first team of Volendam when he was 16. So a young, talented player. So he's an academy, but we have to be honest. It's not that like we developed him all those years. Because of the rules, we're not allowed to write him on the A list of the Champions League. So he cannot play in the Champions League this season, which is unfortunate because of the injury of Lotomba. Otherwise, he would have already played in the Champions League. But at this moment, he's very, very good. Last weekend, for example, we played against RKC, which is not the biggest teams in Holland, but he won all his duels. He won 8 of duels. He's very strong. He's very tough, and also very at ease when he has the ball. So I think he's going to be one to stay, and I think he's going to be seeing much more minutes because of the injuries of both Lotomba and Newcastle.
Yeah, I definitely think that his defensive attributes are a bit superior to his attacking attributes. He's, like Johan said, very good and composed on the ball, but not necessarily a player who gets into the final third very often, will beat opponents 1v1, drive the goal. He's not one of those fullbacks, but his defensive qualities are really exceptional. His tackling is superb. His recovery speed and physicality is great. like I said, it feels a little bit too easy to say, oh yeah, Gertruda, but he is very much in the vein of Gertruda. He has a lot of similar qualities, and yeah, I think he'll be a very, very interesting player for the future. Like I said, he's not someone who's going to wow you and really excite you as one of these roaming, attacking wingbacks, but he's a very, very complete player.
As you mentioned, Adam, he's definitely not Jeremy Frimpong, so a guy who will make this 100 runs a game, but he's a very intelligent fullback. I would call him a complete fullback. And about similarities with Vertroida, I think the versatility is also there. I could see Givairo Read playing as a right back, even as a left back if needed, or even as a center back in a three-man line. And let's not forget that Vertroida is not a pure right back. He was playing for the most of his youth career. He was a center back, so he's a right back, center back hybrid. And I think Givairo Read is kind of a player like that. So if you watch him, do not expect him to make these incredible runs, but he's rather a guy who chooses he runs wisely, good on the ball, so definitely an interesting prospect.
Yeah, the only thing with Givairo Read, if you compare him to Geertruida was very good with his head. He made lots of goals with headers, and Givairo Read doesn't seem to be able to head a ball. And the offensive skills of Geertruida are excellent. In the youth, he also played as a striker, and you could see that at the senior level that he has the skills to score as well.
You know what? When I made a report on 17-year-old Hertroida, I compared him to Sergio Ramos. Why? Because of his incredible character, mentality, and heading skills. He wasn't the tallest, but he was so dominant in the air, and I'm still proud of this comparison. I think I wasn't that far.
Yeah, I think it's also a little bit modern football. I think we're seeing more and more great players come out of academies who do not know how to head a ball. So I think that that's not a difficulty that's exclusive to Givairo Read. But let's go to a more attacking talent now. Zepiqueno Redmond. He's like Givairo Read, a player who has got some interesting minutes already for the first team. He's been in the first team squad for the past 5 matches in the Eredivisie. He's also started 2 of them and appeared in another one from the bench. He's again a Dutch U19 international. And like we said in our show last week, there's been quite a few injury issues up top. So that's given an opportunity to Redmond. He's yet to score from striker, but still interesting to see him get in and amongst the first team and to chart kind of his progression up the academy system.
Yeah, he's a young player that we acquired from ADO Den Haag, who also has a good youth academy as well. A couple of years ago, lots of players are coming from ADO Den Haag. Nathan Ake is another example who used to play for ADO Den Haag and moved to Feyenoord when he was at a younger age. I'll always be hesitant with comparisons, but if I have to compare him with a player, it reminds me of Luc Castanjos, who had a one season at Feyenoord. At the youth, it was amazing. Scored so many goals, and everybody was like, "Okay, Castanjos is going to be the real deal." They compared him back then to Thierry Henry. That really didn't work out that well. But he was very young when he got his chance at Feyenoord. Had one good season, then moved to Inter Milan, and then moved all over the place because well, basically he was not that good. Redmond has all the attributes to be a good football player, but he doesn't excel at one thing yet. And he's big for his age, but it's not big enough for the senior level. He's quick, but not the quickest of all. He's good at finishing, but not the bestest of finishers. So he's a good striker, but I wasn't expecting him to make his debut for Feyenoord this season yet. Well, I told you already, lots of injuries. He's been doing okay, but you see the difference when Carranza plays or Gimenez plays. You see immediately the difference between youth football and senior football because even though he's strong at the senior level, he's a lightweight. But that you can develop.
Yeah, I did not think we'd be speaking about Luc Castagnons in this podcast, a player who I watched quite a bit at Magdeburg, I think 2 years ago, who I don't think he even scored a goal while there. I think it was like 7 months that he went without a goal. And on Redmond, I really like that you mentioned that kind of adaptation to the senior football because I would advise anyone to watch Redmond in youth football and then watch him in senior football. Because at youth football, he looks like an elite target man who can hold opponents off, who works excellent with his back to goal. And he's just far from translating that yet to the first team football. I mean, you see that he's very, very reliant on his physical attributes. And players who are very reliant on physical attributes at youth level tend to also be the ones who struggle the most to adapt to senior level. And I don't want to discount his technical ability. I mean, he even was a winger when he came through early days, so he obviously has some intricate 1v1 technical quality. But I think he will find it hard to adjust. And I think that, like you say, without the injuries to the other players in this Feyenoord roster, I don't necessarily think that Redmond would have been so close to being a big part of the first team. I think that there's other players we'll mention that are higher talents and will have more potential.
As Johan mentioned, he has some decent attributes, but he's not really great at anything. So for me, truly not a level one talent in the Netherlands, maybe tier two or three, not even a top talent for Feyenoord, in my opinion. So still a decent player, but still a lot of work to do. And if I need to have to be a clairvoyant, I think he will become a solid Eredivisie striker in the future. But something more, maybe it all depends on him. And about Lucas Steinjos, Johan, you mentioned him, and I must say that Lucas Steinjos sold me dreams. I remember that fantastic season. I was watching all Eredivisie games back then. I had this TV, and Eredivisie was always there. And yeah, he went to Inter and then completely disappeared from football. Like, really, wow.
Yeah, Sam Lammers, Luc Castagnons, the number of Eredivisie strikers who have sold us dreams in the past, it's kind of a bit of a trend, but we'll hope that Redmond won't be the next one. Speaking of Eredivisie strikers, we have a name which will probably be familiar to all. Shaqueel van Persie. Yep, Van Persie, that's right. It's the son of the famous Robin van Persie. His son's back in the academy. He's 18 years old. He's left-footed like his father. He's also quite elegant on the ball and technically very well versed, like his father as well. I've even seen him in training clips, I believe, doing that famous Robin van Persie flying header. So he's definitely picked up some attributes from his father. The one thing is he's dealt with a lot of injuries over the past 2 years. I believe he missed 400 days since April 2023 with various injuries, which is just an insane record for a teenager to have. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how he develops from that long term. But Johan, is he just yet another one of these players from Holland profiting off their father's legacy, like we mentioned so much with these talents from Netherlands coming from former footballers? Or is he actually really the real deal who could have a future at Feyenoord, even without the last name Van Persie?
When he came to Feyenoord, he came along with his dad, who came from Fenerbahce a couple of years ago. Then everybody thought, okay, he's only getting a spot in the academy purely because of his name, because he wasn't that good when he arrived. But his development has been crazy. He's been developing so extremely well. He got a contract last year, and it's fully deserved because he's been doing very well. But like you said, the injuries, it's terrible. It's killing him. Having so many injuries. But if you look at young Van Persie, Shaquille Van Persie, and you compare, you see the comparisons all along. But also because they play the same position, also because they're both left-footed. He's got a good kick. He can strike the ball. He's got a decent header. He's got the elegant way of moving, which Robin van Persie had as well. I think he's a higher talent than Redmond. He became a bigger talent than Redmond. I'm wondering where he would be if he hadn't had all the injuries. So he's now far from playing at the first team because he missed so many games. But he's not there just because of his name, which like Van der Vaart, I think his son is basically because of his name. Same with Snyder. But Van Persie, I'm sure he'll make it to the senior football level. I hope at Feyenoord, and otherwise other Eredivisie team. But I'm liking him when he's fit and ready to play.
Before the show, we talked with Adam, and then I told Adam, really, I see so many moves of his father in him, like this grace and elegance, this ability to get out of these difficult situations in tight spaces, decent pace as well. I think he suffered a lot from these injuries, and physically, he's not ready for senior football at this point. But yeah, there are a lot of things that I like in Shaquille Van Persie. I do not believe that he will have a career like his father. It's almost impossible. His father was one of the greatest strikers in the 21st century. But I really hope that Shaquille will make it at least at a decent level. We really need strikers, these elegant technical strikers in football. Not only Erling Haaland, so pure monsters, pure physicality, but we also need Van Persie in the world. So I'm crossing my fingers for him and will be monitoring his developments very closely.
Okay, moving on then to a 17-year-old. We're going to central midfield for this one. Nassim El Harmouz. He plays for the Dutch U18 national team, also holds the Moroccan citizenship, though. He's started every fixture for Feyenoord in the UEFA Youth League campaign. Not necessarily the most successful campaign so far, but you never know. Maybe they can register a victory against Sparta Prague this week. And he actually came from AZ Alkmaar in 2022. So another one of these players who wasn't necessarily the entire route through at Feyenoord, but nevertheless has done a big chunk of his development in the academy.
He came from AZ. He had some troubles with his mentality over at AZ. So AZ basically wanted to get rid of him, and then he ended up at Feyenoord. And he's been doing really well. You can see the talent. He's very gifted. He's a smart player as well. But the problem is he's so small. He doesn't have any body. I don't think any Feyenoord supporter really knows him, unlike all the other players that we already talked or we're going to talk about. He's not the biggest of talents at the academy, but I think his downside is his physique, and of course we had in the recent past we also have other small defensive midfielders that are small, like Jordi Klaas, who also a Feyenoord Youth Academy graduate and now plays for AZ. So it's not impossible, but it's hard to see him adapting at the senior level if he doesn't gain like 15 kilos. Of course, I would also love to see him gain like 15 centimeters, but that's probably impossible at this age. But he's a talented football player. I'm very curious where he will end up. He is like one of the players who hasn't trained with the first team yet. Other players, like for example Redmond or Sleety, or other players have already trained with the first team. He's one of those players who hasn't trained with the first team yet. But yeah, I'm curious where he end up.
Yeah, I'm gonna be brutally honest here. So the current generation of Feyenoord players, so let's say 2006 to 2008, is not the most impressive generation that Feyenoord had, for sure. I have seen much better ones, even though there are some interesting players, and I think our last player will be the most interesting. So El Hamouz is definitely one of the players, one of the most interesting players from this team. And when you watch a Feyenoord game, you spot him straight away. He's in the mold of the players like Vitinha, for example. So very small roaming playmaker, incredible close control, incredible technique, very good bravery on the ball, and willingness to do things that are very creative and uncommon. So a decent talent. Definitely a player that many people would enjoy watching. You said that you hope that he will grow 15 centimeters. I think players like him should not get over 175. And I'm quite sure that he will be a star somewhere because he truly has what it takes to be fans' favorites and a player that people buy tickets for to watch a player like him.
Yeah, for me, he's kind of a player of magical moments, but still a player of moments. So you have kind of really elite quality in short phases, and you can make an incredible highlight tape out of his games. But over 90 minutes, he also can have passages where you truly see kind of his diminutive nature, his physical disadvantages, and the fact that, I mean, nowadays U19 football, you're playing against absolute monsters in the youth league. And you can see also when he comes up against kind of real robust senior men, players who are ready for senior football, that he still looks like a player who needs to play youth football. And I think that's something that is keeping him behind, and will be interesting to see how he goes on from there, because like Jacek said, wherever he goes in his career, he will need to basically have a system built around him. And now the question is, will that be at Breda or will that be at a truly top club like Vitinha, for example, at PSG? I'm unfortunately leaning more towards the Breda outcome, but let's wait and see. But as for our final player, he's also a true creator who you need to build your team around. But when we're talking about will it be Breda or will it be PSG, this is one I'm a little bit more leaning towards the elite future. And we are, of course, talking about Ayoub Ouarghi. He's a 16-year-old attacking midfielder, plays for the Netherlands U17 national team, but he too holds Moroccan citizenship. He's an absolute fixture of the under 19 side already in Feyenoord. So he's playing a few years up, and he's started every game in the U19 top flight, and he's also started every single game in the youth league. So Ayoub Ouarghi, Johan, he's a player we could not miss when talking about this academy generation, because I think it's a safe to assume that he truly is the biggest talent in the academy.
Yes, he's been rumored to be the biggest talent that's been playing at Varkenoord for the last couple of years. What's especially fun when you consider he's from Amsterdam. Normally, Rotterdam talents go to Amsterdam, but now we have one that was born and raised and still lives in Amsterdam, but goes to Rotterdam every day. Ajax has been trying him to get him for so many years, but he's always said no, I don't want. He signed a contract, so he's now at Feyenoord for at least 2 more years. Young player, 16 years old, plays above his age. His nickname is the Monster. Of course, nicknames are difficult because they don't really sum it really all up. But he's the real deal. I'm pretty sure he will make it at Feyenoord 1. Maybe this season already. I hope it. It's my dream that he will make his debut for Feyenoord 1 this season. He's very, very, very talented. He's very gifted. He's already has a lot of popularity here in Holland because he's been featured a lot at Tuzani, which is a street footballer who has a television program here in Holland, and he's been on that program since he was like a 8-9 year kid. So all the young kids, my kids, never go to Varkenoord. My kids are 8 and 10, but they know the monster. They know the monster. They know who Ayoub Ouarghi is. So his marketing is on spot. So I really like him. The last couple of years, we haven't been developing any attacking players who made it at Feyenoord 1. The last one was Jean-Paul Boetius, which is way back that he was a regular at Feyenoord 1. And we have a lot of midfielders and defenders have been coming over, but no strikers or wingers. Ayoub Ouarghi is one who could be one of those that is like Ajax and PSV develop youth players that also make the first team in the front row. So I'm very curious how he will develop, but I hope to see him very soon at Feyenoord 1.
Watch some of these Tuzani episodes, even though my Dutch is not the greatest. And the monster Ouarghi is always there with Sami Buhudane. So 2008 generation top talents in the Netherlands. I must say that I like this generation 2008 much more than the 2007 one, because you have the likes of Ouarghi, Buhudane, Stur, Achiampong, so really some top talents. And about Ouarghi, he is incredible. Like on his day, he is a 10 out of 10 talents. So incredible in tight spaces, fantastic dribbler, can also play on the wing as a wide playmaker, slightly like Felipe Coutinho used to do. Of course, the physicality he needs to work hard on that to be ready to senior football, but the material to work with is amazing. And it's funny that he represents two countries at the moment. So he plays for Morocco under 17s and Netherlands under 17s. And so where there is a camp of Morocco under 17, he goes there, and then he goes to the Dutch under 17 team. So it's really funny, but yeah, such a top talent. And it's funny that you mentioned Amsterdam, because every time I watch Ouarghi, he plays great games against Ajax youth teams. Like he's always the best player on the pitch, always destroying Ajax. So he really has a thing against Ajax, I think.
Lives in Amsterdam, plays for Feyenoord, plays for the Moroccan and Dutch national teams. So there really are no allegiances in Ouarghi's life. This man feels like he will play for whoever and go wherever. But yeah, a truly sensational talent. I mean, as Jacek mentioned, I think you basically touched on everything. I think also one other thing is set pieces. Also great set pieces as a direct set piece threat, but also from corners and indirect free kicks. For me, just a true diminutive magician. Obviously, these players have difficulties translating into senior football. I mean, in general, all of these Moroccan and North African wizards always have a little bit of struggles to make it into senior football. But if he can kind of iron out those deficiencies, he'd be an absolute X factor. And yeah, I mean, the Eredivisie is the best league in the world to watch players like Ouarghi take these first steps. So I think he's in good hands at Feyenoord. I think that's the exact right spot for him to make his career. But Johan, it was a pleasure having you on again. 2 episodes in a row. I think we've covered basically every aspect of Feyenoord that can possibly be done. I don't think we left any stone unturned. But if you guys still want even more Feyenoord content, then Johan, tell them where they can find you twice a week.
Kein Geloel podcast on your favorite podcast player. We'll be there talking so many hours about Feyenoord, our favorite passion, our hobby, our lives. Just like you'd love to talk about football, we like to talk about football, but then especially about Feyenoord football. So listen, if you can speak Dutch, listen to us at the Feyenoord podcast.